Hello everyone, my name is Drew Taylor
And I'm Michael Leonard-Power.
and we are students in Memorial University's Technology program. We are joined today by Dr. Mike Martin, who has worked in multiple roles in the technology education field over the last 25 years. Dr. Martin is currently teaching in Liverpool and focuses most of his work on the values within design technology. How are you today, Dr. Martin?
Oh, good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you for joining us. So, let's get into our first question. Can you provide us with an example of how social movements or consumer demand have shaped the development of certain technologies? As teachers, how might such an example be integrated into the classroom by teachers?
Okay, so when I'm thinking about social movements, consumer demand shaped technologies, there's a few that come to mind. The one from back in my day, I remember the Walkman. You might remember, I don't know if you remember a Walkman. It was imagine a cassette tape being put into a small kind of player, and people would carry this by the size, and then people started to run with it. It became very awkward to run with, and then the technology kind of evolved. Things changed size. We then got the iPod, and now we've got these headphones, kind of Bluetooth headphones. And although the technology has developed, I think it has been as a result of demand for things that are smaller, more kind of human-centered. And another interesting one, which I was kind of reflecting about, which is certainly outside of the classroom kind of experience, for me is an air fryer. I don't know if you come across these air fryers. And they were kind of came about and they were sitting on the shelves and people used them. But it was when there were lots of programs and things on social media talking about how much energy it would save. And I don't know about where you are, but in England, there was been like an explosion of people demanding or wanting to have these in their house. And it's been an interesting thing because that's one thing that, we'll have things to cook with. An air fryer is extra. So do we really need it? And is it just really consumer demand that's kind of allowed this kind of new product to develop? As a teacher, it gets a little bit harder. How would you integrate that into the classroom? One of the things I tend to explore with the students is the use of carrier bags, different types of carrier bags. So you get some made out of cotton, out of plastic, and out of recycled plastic. And there's been, again, in the UK, I'm sure it's the same where you are, a lot of push on biodegradable bags and people making choices about those. Part of it's driven by the supermarkets and companies and partly by society, as it were. So there are some examples, but often the boundaries are quite blurred between, is it technology push, if you like, the manufacturers saying this is what you need, or is it the people saying this is what we want? So it's an interesting combination. But something like bags, you can get to talk about lots of interesting issues. If it's made out of cotton, where it comes from, the amount of water that's used to make it. I did once have some, you get a lot of anecdotes probably now, but I have one that was biodegradable and I put some books in it to put it in the loft. And 3 years later, it had completely collapsed and had absolutely nothing holding my books together. But so there are some interesting examples.
Yeah, so I think it definitely is a good balance between what people need and what they want to make. And I liked your example of, the cassette moved into what we have now as iPods and iPhones. It was a consumer demand to be able to have these devices, but be able to have mobility with them and move from place to place while using them. So I certainly agree with you on that one. That was a great example.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, there's other, phones is dominates our lives so much. But another interesting example for you would be my wife happens to come from Brazil, and in Brazil, if you want a phone line, it's really, really difficult. So there's been was an explosion in the use of cell phones, way above getting landlines. So in remote areas, it's the same in South Korea as well, I believe. They set up lots of satellites, and the mobile phone industry kind of exploded in a way that here we had the whole landline thing, and that developed a lot first. So lots of these kind of social developments are contextual and cultural, depending on the situation and what's going on in the country at the moment. So yeah. Mm.
Technology in a socio-cultural environment.
Yeah, I think when we talk, when we're in the kind of technology classroom workshop and we pick up objects, we tend to talk to the children, the learners, about it itself, maybe some of the materials it's made of, but putting that in context, any object, if we can manage to put it in a context, how is this being used, by whom, in what situation, that straight away gives you an indication that there's other factors involved in bringing this thing about. Where have those materials come from? The example I talked, I think, in the chapter about the chocolate egg. I think I was just using something like that. I happen to have one here. And I do a great little activity with learners in this, and we kind of unwrap it a bit at a time, and we look at okay, what's brought this about. What's the outer materials made from aluminium? Where's aluminium come from? Well, not England. It's probably come from Ghana in West Africa, where they mine a lot of bauxite and turn it into aluminium. It's probably been on a boat up to Iceland and rolled out. Then we've got the chocolate that's inside. Where's that come from? Combination of milk and cocoa, again, from different places. So the moment you kind of look at context in which things are being used, or what has brought this about, we've needed all these different materials to bring this product about, then you can have a bit more of a conversation about how technology does affect and is affected by the environment and society. And we tend to isolate technology, and when we're looking at it, which is great in terms of analyzing, but what we do is we hide, and this is one of the other questions, I think, we hide the kind of the things that are behind it and the things that have helped to bring it about. And if we can provide some kind of a window on that, then I think we allow our learners to see, what are the consequences of technology, really.
Yeah, it's pretty good to see where everything came from and to make a full artifact.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to our next question. So you mentioned the rise of AI and cyborg relations. In what ways do you believe these developments will influence our understanding of technology in the future?
Yeah, interesting. Yes, AI is an interesting one. I think, let me focus more on what you might consider cyborg. I suppose from simple prosthetic limbs, which are pieces of technology, are now people kind of embody that. My son's partner, she has a Bluetooth pacemaker, which is interesting. So we sometimes have these bits of technology, and she walks into the surgery and she sees Wi-Fi connected to the doctor's computer, and he can see what's going on in her heart. So we have these technologies that are starting to blur the boundaries between human as in, flesh and bone, and bits of technology. But I was reading something there's an author called Don Idy, and who's a big philosopher in technology. And he was saying that we've always really been shaped by technology as much as us shaping it. And I think our understanding of technology and our relationship to it is changing. And one of the things that I found very useful is the idea of mediation, that technology actually mediates our experience. So here we are on Zoom, and the fact that I'm looking at a small screen is different than us having an actual conversation. And bits of technology that we have in our lives affect us as human beings. It changes the way we behave and the way that we kind of see the world. So I think it's, I don't know whether our view of technology is going to change. I think our experience of living with it closer, perhaps more personal, I think that will become much more of a thing. And yeah, I think that's only going to grow, really.
Yeah, I think it's amazing how we can use technology in healthcare to help people. And I definitely agree that we have an impact on technology, but technology has an impact on us as well. It's like a two-way street.
All right,
Yeah.
so the next question. Looking at the statement, foregrounding the visible product that we see in front of us can lead to ignorance about the consequences of its existence and use, such as the use of materials or effects on the environment when being disposed of. Oftentimes, when we think of technology, we only think of innovation and new creations. The electric car is potentially a great form of technology that is supposed to help the environment, but is this a situation where we maybe need to also consider material sourcing, manufacturing process, and life cycle impact when evaluating its effectiveness?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure where you are is the same here. We have a real explosion in electric cars. I think what's happened is, I mean, there's a couple of things really, that we still are seeing the car as a product in its own right. Okay, and that's what I was referring to before, really. If we're seeing, and the electric car is a really good example of this, because without places to charge it, it's stuff. Yeah, a phone without a network is absolutely useless. It's a bunch of wires. So the electric car isn't really a car, it's more of a kind of a system. So yeah, I mean, in looking at the electric cars that we have specifically, we have in the UK, I think I've been disappointed really in that, BMW and Jaguar and all these big car companies, they've just replaced the petrol engine with an electric motor. Everything else seems to be pretty much the same. It's still luxurious. It still uses lots of, expensive materials, some rare metals and things like that in its construction. And we haven't really rethought that kind of view of the world. I think the key is in seeing the bigger picture, that actually an electric car is part of a system of transport. And if we can look at that, and governments aren't very good at this because they look at things in the short term. But okay, so we want a greener system of moving people around. So let's improve our public transport. We were talking about trains earlier, make those a bit better. And we will have electric cars, but maybe we don't need as many. And we have more electric buses and other things. So I think, yeah, absolutely, we need to look at the implications of that and what happens to those things. Many things would be recycled, I would imagine. I know certain, at least one or two car companies, they label all the parts in the car so that it can be recycled afterwards. It says what they're made out of. But I think there is for governments and that, let's look at the bigger picture and let's look at the context in which we're working. And I think for technology teachers, I think I would suggest that the future of technology education is one where we're able to link everything we do in a classroom to some kind of human need, some wider global connection, because we're living in a world where we've got finite resources, global warming, and that has to drive everything that we do and we talk about, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty good how you said that they changed from the engine to the electrical, but you can still don't look any different from the outside. So They're not really
Yeah,
designed as
yeah,
that.
I'd be all for simplifying things. Get everything, make it really simple. I've got far too many buttons in the car to do stuff. I never, the voice thing on the steering column, that packed in. But, I don't use it. So do we really need all this stuff? Some of it? Hey,
So we'll move on to our next question. So
sure.
in schools, we often teach students about how to use various forms of technology. In what ways could we not only teach students to use technology, but critically think about how to appreciate it and value it?
Yeah, one of the best strategies I've come across is it was from a book produced by Nuffield, the Nuffield Design and Technology Project. That was a thing in England in the 90s, and they talked about winners and losers, and get children in a class, some to look at who's going to benefit from the technology, to look at a specific piece of technology. It could be a woolly hat, we're making this new waterproof hat out of microfiber. Okay, who's going to benefit from it? Like the people involved in making it, people wearing it, who might lose as a result. It's hard to say, but it's going to go into some kind of waste system down the line. And to get children to have a debate, really, about these are the pros, these are the cons for this thing that we're looking to develop, and what's the balance, so that hopefully can encourage students to think about the values that are involved, the aesthetic values, the economic, cultural values that are involved in products. And because nothing's clear cut, of course, this is the thing. We can look at values within technology, but it's what's more important than others. If a environmental kind of drive is really the thing, and it's a strong thing in the way I think, then that's overriding some more kind of economic and other kind of maybe aesthetic systems. I'd be quite happy with an air-powered car, like a Citroen CV, one of those little funny little cars, because it's just really simple. Yeah.
Yeah, so
So I think the other one is to maybe, sorry, just the only other one is to look at case studies of technologies, and present, as I say, kind of stories about how they're important, perhaps in different cultures as well. Sorry.
oh, no worries. So, yeah, I think that's really important to try to get students to not just look directly at the piece of technology and just recreating it, to weigh the pros and cons and the impact of the technology on the real world, whether it be aesthetically or environmental effects, but like to look beyond the technology itself and the impact that it can have.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so the next question we have is, could you elaborate further on the importance of considering ethics, environment, and sociology when attempting to understand the implications of technological advancements?
Yeah, I think it rolls on the back of what we were just talking about, really, that you have one planet, we have limited resources, and we need to think quite carefully about not just the group of users that a product is aimed for, but any potential consequences outside of that. There's some, and I think considering systems, kind of cradle to grave systems, can help us with that a lot. In Sweden, I know when they do technology education, have quite a big strand on systems thinking, and it's not just about computer logic gates and all that kind of stuff. It's about the whole thing, how technology comes about. Yeah, and looking at different groups of people, as I say. So I went to Holland for a conference on ethics in technology, which was really, really interesting. And everything there is, if you go on the bus, you pay by card. It's completely paperless. And I was thinking about if that happened here, what our elderly people who are used to dealing with money, how that would impact on them, and just have that as just one little example, really, of you need to think beyond just who it's for, but any potential consequences outside of that, really. Yeah, yeah. We don't think of ethics quite so much in this country, and it was interesting to learn that in the Netherlands, many companies, manufacturing companies, have ethical people there, philosophers and people who are interested in ethics, and they consider all the ethical implications of their new products. It's just built into their way of thinking.
It's interesting that they implemented ethical workers for that. So
we'll jump into our next question. So, in your chapter, you stated that technology is inextricably linked with our humanity. To be human is to live and work with technology. It is valuable to us, and without it, we would struggle to exist on the planet. Technology is certainly beneficial to our survival. However, can you think of some ways in which technological advancements have had a negative impact on humanity?
Yeah, I was trying to avoid talking about phones, really, because they they do dominate our lives completely. But just 10 seconds on that to think about. I remember when we walked in the forest the other week, which is not too far from here, and my wife's very keen to know how far we've walked. So she puts the app on the phone, and we start to get, I think, connected to technology, and that makes us disconnected from the environment. I'm using that as a specific example. So we get internalized, and we're interested in what's going on in the little box inside of us, and the rest of the world is just passing us by. We don't look up enough, I don't think. So I think phones is an example where I think it has had some negative impacts, and people will talk about this at large. There are smaller examples where in the food industry, for instance, we have modified air packaging. So if you get a food product that's sealed in plastic, inside that there will be a reduced air content. It'll be higher in carbon dioxide, so that helps to make it last longer. And the consequence of that, which is a great piece of technology, if you like, for preserving stuff, is that now we've got loads of these bits of film. When we go to look at our waste, we're putting the plastic in the waste. Everything's covered in plastic and plastic film, rather than just being loose. And some people are challenging that. There are places you can go in England, I'm sure it's the same where you are, where you take your own containers and you can fill it with produce and take it away, and the packaging doesn't exist kind of anymore. But I'd see that as a great example of preserving stuff, but the consequences are we've got a lot more plastic and packaging to deal with. And another rather trivial example, but kind of not in a way, we have leaf blowers, and I'm sure you have leaf blowers where you are. And there's you don't know where I live, so that's okay. There's a guy over the road, and his garden can't be more than about 10 square meters at the front, but he's got a leaf blower. He's got an electric leaf blower. I've got a rake. I'm not saying I'm better than him, but gets me out the house. And when it's fall here, clear the leaves up, put them in the bin, I'm done. But that leaf blower, which has used lots of plastic and copper wire in the motor and stuff like that, lots of resources to produce, I don't think we need it. And things become cheap, so they become disposable. We have Primark here. You may have Primark in where you are, which is a shop, and you can buy T-shirts and things for just a couple of pounds. And we have a lot of disposable stuff. And I think it's if our technology education, if you guys in school can kind of help children to understand that these things don't just appear magically in the shop, that they've come from somewhere and they're going to go somewhere. If you can instill a little bit of that thinking, maybe we can kind of reduce some of the impacts that we have on our environment. A lot of what I say is driven by the environment, because I think that's got to be really important for us.
Yeah, I think we are, as teachers, we're definitely in a position to educate students on how technology can impact the environment. And I really like the example you used of the smartphone. It has definitely had so many positive implications, but there's definitely been some negative drawbacks as well, as a lot of people are always on their phones and missing what's happening in the world around them.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things to remember is this is designed in. The apps are designed to draw you in. The social media is designed to engage you. People are paid money for the app that pulls people in. You know, the one that engages you, the Candy Crush little game on the phone with the things falling down stuff. The next version of that is got to be at least as good. And then we're stuck with it. You know, it's deliberately designed, intentionally designed. And you've got people, you've got psychologists, you've got behavior, people that know about human behavior involved in the teams that are developing these apps. And it's quite deliberately designed to engage us. And it's hard to break away from that and to think critically about it.
So we actually got a couple questions come in from our audience.
Sure.
So we'll just start up with a couple of them, Mike.
Yes, so one is with the integration of technology across all subjects, how can teachers help students recognize technology as both a tool and a product of societal values? Can you provide an example of activities that encourage critical thinking about these dual roles?
Okay, so integration of technology across subjects, is that something that you have within the curriculum? Just to ask you back there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, the question again. So think of an example of technology. Sorry, I lost your thread there.
With the integration of technology across all subjects, how can teachers help students recognize technology as both a tool and a product of societal values? Can you provide an example of activities that encourage critical thinking about these dual roles?
Okay, technology as a tool and as an impact. Yes, that's harder, I would say. Just trying to think technology as a tool. Yeah, you flunked me on that one as a question. Bicycle. Okay, let's think bicycle. Let's think bikes. Bikes, I think, are really good examples of technology as a form of transport, I suppose, as a collection of materials, but also the way that bikes and bicycles have developed, that has impacts on society and has impacted, have societal impacts on it. Yeah, if we're talking about technologies in tablets, phones, that kind of technology, they are used across subjects, and they're used as tools, I suppose, in a way, as a way of getting communication, of capturing information, sharing resources. So in that sense, the technology, as in this kind of electronic stuff, is definitely a tool. And it is quite hard, really, unless you know a lot about this, its origin, where it came from. It's really hard to tell that other side of things in terms of technology having an impact. So having some really good case studies written up about specific bits of technology, I think that's a real plus. And back in the 90s, when there was this Nuffield project, they produced a book. It was a study guide. That was I don't think it's even in print now, but you might get it electronically online. And it had case studies from all around the world about how technology is being used and how it affected people in their environment. So I'm not sure I've answered the question, but tricky question.
I think that was pretty good. So that's all the time we have right now. So
Okay.
Yep, thank you very much for joining us on behalf of me, Michael, and the rest of our technology class. You provided some excellent answers to the questions we had, and hopefully we'll meet up again another time.
Yeah, anytime. Ask away.
Thank you.
thank you.
Or email. Okay, thanks. Cheers, guys.
No.